And it was during my time at Christian Brothers where I learned that leadership is not a title, leadership is a skill set and needs to be practiced and developed over time. I'm on a mission to reach people and build leaders. You can't effectively lead others if you can't effectively lead yourself. And that's why I like to say that we're contagious. You can either infect or you can affect. The sale is a natural byproduct of exceptional standard setting service. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. It's the person before the profit, the person before the process, it's the connection before the content. And ultimately, that's why they're coming back.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Lift Your Shop podcast. I'm Kelsey Allison with Lift Auto Repair Marketing, and today we have another amazing guest. We have Josh Parnell, co-founder and CEO of the Limitless Leadership Coaching Program. He's a leadership coach, trainer, speaker, also podcast host of his Limitless Leadership podcast. So, Josh, thank you so much for being with us today.
Kelsey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, and so obviously I know you're based out there in the Houston, Texas area, but Josh, how did you get involved with leadership coaching? Kind of what is your journey and story here in the automotive industry?
Yeah, my journey begins about 10 years ago as it relates to getting into the industry. And so I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force and went through a 4-year enlistment with the Air Force, got out, got my degree, went into oil and gas for a few years. And a friend of mine, while I was in oil and gas, reached out and said, hey, there's a position opening up at Christian Brothers Automotive, and I think you'd be a good fit. I'm curious if you're interested. And at the time, I had I had a good job. I definitely wasn't calling it a career. It definitely wasn't a passion of mine, but it was a good job. And in oil and gas at the time, it was very much of a fluctuating type of business. And so I thought, you know what? I'm not an automotive guy. I don't have an automotive background, but what I knew about my friend who reached out was all he would talk about was this amazing company that he worked for. And it was enough for me to at least pique my interest and see what Christian Brothers Automotive was all about. And so about a decade ago, I was able to accept an offer with Christian Brothers Automotive as a service development trainer. And shortly thereafter, a couple of years had gone by and was promoted to the director of service development. So had the opportunity to lead that department. And what that means is I was creating, our team was creating, facilitating all the training programs for service managers, service advisors, and incoming franchisees. And it was a really phenomenal experience. It helped me grow as a leader. When I first started with Christian Brothers, I didn't really view myself as a leader. I viewed myself as a hardworking individual who was good at following instructions and good at following direction, but I didn't see myself or view myself as a leader. And it was during my time at Christian Brothers where I learned that leadership is not a title, leadership is a skill set and needs to be practiced and developed over time. And so I was with Christian Brothers for almost 8 years, and a couple years ago just had a strong calling, if you will, to step outside and really step out in faith, to step outside of Christian Brothers and launch my own leadership coaching, training, and speaking company. And so that's what I did. A couple years ago, jumped into this terrifying world of entrepreneurship, and it has very, very much been like a roller coaster, but it's been plenty more highs than lows, and I'm very thankful and blessed to say that it's working. You know, we're able to make a significant impact in the industry and working with a lot of coaching clients, having a lot of training and speaking opportunities. And ultimately, I'm on a mission to reach people and build leaders. And so I couldn't have done that or do this had it not been for the experience I gained with Christian Brothers Automotive and the knowledge and the skill set and the relationships I was able to form with that company. But thankful and blessed to be doing what I'm doing now. And it's exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And obviously we'll be diving into leadership today, and excited to talk about it. But I want to dive in a little bit more about kind of your background here with Christian Brothers. So obviously a lot of the people that we speak to are independent shop owners, and we compete against these franchises, Christian Brothers being one of them. But I think one thing, I mean, obviously you're in it, and I mean, I guess you were in it, and you kind of know the procedures and processes. But what is one thing that you think helps set franchises apart?
That's a great question. I mean, community comes to mind. Culture is another thing. Christian Brothers culture is really unrivaled. It is something that that when you're a part of it, when you see it, when you walk into a shop, and you know some shops that I'm talking about, not just Christian Brothers, but you know, Kelsey, there are shops that you've gone into where you just feel that there's something different.
Hmm.
And it's very evident that they understand the concept of serving versus selling, for example. And you can walk into a shop and you identify that these individuals are serving each other first before they're serving their guest. And that might sound a little strange to the listening audience, saying thinking that, wait, I should be serving my team and we should be serving each other before we serve our guest. And my answer is yes. I firmly believe that, because ultimately the service that you're providing bleeds into the guest experience. And if you are serving each other, this is the concept of servant leadership, where you're showing up for each other, you're supporting, guiding, serving each other. That's going to go a long way. And that's something that is very evident when you step inside of a Christian Brothers Automotive, any location, and certainly the home office where I had the pleasure of serving for, again, almost 8 years.
Yeah, and I love that servant-based leadership. And is that something that's easily taught? Because I mean, it sounds like you were kind of over this process of kind of creating this, where it obviously makes it easy for franchisees to be like, I mean, that's why we're signing up. It's like you guys have the processes built out, and so what is that possible to create a process where servant leadership can be done?
It was certainly a team effort, so I definitely don't want to take credit for me being the leading the charge here.
Mhm.
I do feel like I played a good a good role, and was able to make an impact and be a good influence. But ultimately, it was a massive team effort, and I think it can be taught, but I think more importantly, it can be caught. And so,
Mhm.
as you are first and foremost working on serving, or excuse me, leading yourself, you can't effectively lead others if you can't effectively lead yourself. And so, how are we leveling up? How are we sharpening our axe? I believe that we can level up in 5 different areas of our life, which is spiritually, physically, emotionally, academically, and financially. And if we're mindful of these 5 areas in our life, we're able to level up and lead ourselves more effectively to ultimately serve others around us. And I saw a number of folks being able to do that consistently. And when you have everyone doing it, and it's this exponential growth, it's the compound effect. There's going to be days where maybe it's not the best day, and we're not, I like to say that we're either above the line or below the line, and we want to stay above the line, but it's okay to get below the line, knowing that we can eventually get right back up. And I think being able to recognize that not every day is going to be a good day, but we can still find the good in every day. When you have multiple people around you who are living this type of lifestyle and working on servant leadership, it's certainly caught. I mean, you can't help but go to an organization like Christian Brothers, and there's plenty out there in the industry, but you can't help but go there and immediately feel something different and catch whatever this is. And that's why I like to say that we're contagious. You can either infect or you can affect. And when you can really lead yourself well and lead others well, you're able to affect people in a incredibly positive way to ultimately experience exponential growth.
Yes, no, definitely. I love that contrast of analogies there in terms of infect and effect. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I think through that experience, and I think that culture of Christian Brothers is definitely unique in and of itself. And for me, I mean, I personally have not even stepped into one before, but I do know the culture based on just communication and language and things that have come across the board just through interactions from others. So that shows me in and of itself that yeah, that culture is embedded deeply into the brand itself. And so, how do you think that happens quickly? Do you think it happens over time? So obviously, I mean, your focus has been always on like, hey, that service, that service advisors in particular, and that being a very very key role in the shop. But how long of a journey does that take for them to like buy in? Is it an immediate thing? Is it nope? It's going to take 6 months, a year, 3 years. What does that look like?
It's a great question. What I've been able to witness over the years is, because of the foundation that's been created and the expectations are clear, the standards have been defined. Once a newcomer comes into a brand like that, it actually is caught pretty quick. And what I would see often is this individual or these individuals who are new to the brand, they identify it immediately, and it's almost this concept of like, I, as the newcomer, am waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, this can't be real. This can't be how everyone is. This can't be how they actually operate. And pretty quickly, they're able to identify, no, this is the real deal. We connect through authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. And we're able to show up for people in a way that's just not really heard of around many industries, let alone the automotive repair industry. That you and I both know, Kelsey, that this industry has a black eye for a reason. And when we can show up differently for folks who are used to this industry, it's actually quite easy to shift a paradigm and shift perspective when they see everyone else living by these principles. And something I'm very proud of that I still will coach to this day is this concept of serving versus selling. So when I was at Christian Brothers, what our team really focused on was a service development. When I started, it was actually a sales development program or
Mm,
sales development department. And a couple years had gone by, and then I had the opportunity to lead that department. And one of the first changes that me and another team member made was we're changing the department from sales to service. And the reason being is because when we focus on serving that guest and loving that guest and taking care of that guest, the sale is a natural byproduct of exceptional standard setting service.
mm,
So we're still teaching and coaching and training sales, and we have sales processes that we would coach and train. And we know that KPIs are important. We need to make a profit in order to stay in business. But if we focus our efforts on the service aspect of it, the sale is a natural byproduct. And that's the same type of mind frame or paradigm shift I'm encouraging for the entire industry to capture and recognize that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And people come back to your shop because of the way that you served them. They're not coming back because you fixed their brakes. They're coming back because of the way that Kelsey made them feel. And one of my favorite quotes to always share is from Maya Angelou. She said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Ultimately, our guests are coming back to our shops because of how you made them feel, how you're able to create a positive buying experience through the service and sales aspect of it. So whenever we're presenting a sale, for example, while we know the transaction is ultimately going to be the result, we're not focused on the money. We're not focused on the transaction. I'm focused on serving this guest and serving them well. And so if I can explain the information that I'm sharing with them in understandable, relatable terms, provide value, help them understand the benefits of these repairs, I'm simply a liaison between mechanical specialist and guest. And I, through my sales presentation, the way I'm telling a story and sharing this information with them, am helping them make an informed, positive buying decision. And that's ultimately what's going to prompt them to come back. It's not because we fix their brakes. That's the expectation. They brought their vehicle to an automotive repair shop because they expect for the repair to be done. What they're not expecting is this above and beyond personalization and customization of the service experience. We're treating them, it's a name before the job title. It's the person before the profit, the person before the process. It's the connection before the content. And ultimately, that's why they're coming back.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're saying it so well in terms of breaking it down so simply. I mean, there's a reason why they're called service advisors and not sales advisors. And they're
Yeah.
just very simple things in terms of like, hey, like believe in your title of what it is and kind of be proud behind what that may be. And I think one thing I've always found is if you're in a rut of any kind, say mentally, emotionally, maybe go to your next door neighbor and just serve them and see what they need. And there is no way that you will feel negative emotion from said service. Because again, you were not expecting anything. You're like, you know what? I want to go do this for someone else. One, they feel good. Naturally, you feel good. And then you kind of feel that momentum rolling in the right direction. So I think it's a big thing. Well, even in business, yes, like we're a for-profit business. We're not doing nonprofit work. But if you're in that mentality of like, hey, I'm just looking to help and serve, and yes, there are some costs associated with said service at times, but this is what you need right now. And then that kind of snowball starts to trickle through and people just start feeling like, oh, like I'm not really paying. This is just like a byproduct of again what he's telling me. I need to do this and I want to do this. And I
Right.
think yeah, you're hitting it right on the nail there in terms of that expectation. But on the flip side now, so as you have you trained a bunch of different service advisors and you've seen them, what obviously I know there's things that need to be corrected, but what are some of the things that need to be corrected that are sometimes just like not seen? So kind of those like those faults that they have that like anyone has, especially in the service advisor role, that maybe is not at the forefront. They don't even realize it, or the owner doesn't even realize that's there.
That's a great question. I'm going to verbally process this answer for you because I don't know that I can off the top of my head think of things that are not seen,
Hmm.
but definitely felt. And what's felt is often poor communication.
Mm,
And what we know is that poor communication is actually costing shop owners 18% of total salaries being paid out on an annual basis, which means that if you're a shop owner and you're listening and you're paying $1 million in salary across an annual basis to your entire team, poor communication could actually be creating sunk costs in the amount of $180,000-ish every single year. And to pair that with the reality of when you have poor communication, there's actually studies that show that you're missing out on 7.47 hours per week of productivity. And so now we do see this at times, but we definitely feel it. Like we definitely feel the breakdown in communication. And this is where, as a leadership coach, that's really why I'm primarily focusing on the soft skills. I'm focusing on the communication or lack thereof. I'm focusing on effective delegation. I'm focusing on time management because we often say, hey, even though we work a grinding schedule, we don't have time. We don't have time. And I always respectfully suggest, like, hey, are you saying that you don't have time or that you're not making time? Because what we do know is that we make time for priorities. The problem is we as advisors and managers feel like we are, I mean, we're part-time firefighters because we're always putting out fires. We don't have any time. We have no time to do this, that, or the
mm,
other thing, which means everything's a priority. But I often say if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority.
mm.
So how are we prioritizing our time? How are we casting a clear vision if I'm a shop owner so that my team can drive the mission towards the vision? These are the focus points that I'm working with shops on daily. And again, even though I have an operational coaching background in the industry, and I can get into operational based things with my clients. We primarily stay on the soft skills, the leadership things, because when you find out that poor communication is creating massive um, consequences to your business, that is one of the things that we tackle first and foremost. So that would be a part of the answer that I'm, to your question. I think the other part is we don't often see this, but again, it's often felt, and this is a really a lack of accountability across the board. And what I mean by this is as a trainer, because I do coaching, I do training as well, but as a trainer, what I see is we have team members come into a training environment and they are getting a lot of information all at once, and it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. And what we know is that 70% of the training that you're getting today will be forgotten by tomorrow, and 90% will be forgotten in a week. And so there's importance to the follow-up. The fortune is in the follow-up. Like we've got to make sure that we're consistently coaching beyond the training that they experience in a short day or week-long training or whatever, however long it is. So when I talk about what's felt is someone will go to training a year ago and the shop owner says, oh, I sent my team to training a year ago, so they should know this or they should have it down. And the reality is we brain dump a lot of things that we get at training, and so it's important that there's accountability, there's calls to action beyond the information that you gained to consistently practice. Like the three areas I often share with shop owners that we're missing is effective onboarding, proper training, and consistent coaching. And when I say practice, that's where proper training falls into play, because we as an industry, and quite frankly, in any industry, from a professional side of things, we often treat training like a one-time thing.
Mm.
I encourage all of us to treat training like an athlete treats practice. I know you're a former baseball player, Kelsey, and I know that you spend hours of practice to play in a game. It's hours and hours and hours to play in one game. It's way more practice than game time. But if you flip it around and we go to our shops, it's all game and very little practice. And this is where we try to shift a paradigm and help shops recognize you've got to spend time on training to ultimately reap the benefits from the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, like practice definitely reaps the results in the game. But let's go about how do they practice? Like, is it like a one-on-one mock scenario where like, hey, you're gonna pretend you're the customer, I'm gonna do my job, or how do you go about doing these little drills, so to say?
Yeah, so I implement what I call the mall training method, and the mall training method is an acronym MAWL, which stands for Model, Assist, Watch, and Launch. So any of my clients who work with me, they know this method by now. A lot of them implement it and they see rapid results pretty quickly. And what happens is, and I'm going to use this analogy. So I'm a shop owner and I just hired a service advisor to work the front of the counter, to answer the phones, to check guests in. And there's a number of different responsibilities added to what I just shared. But what we know is that we're going to groom this new hire to be the check-in specialist, the check-in guru. And in order to do that, I'm going to first and foremost vocalize and verbalize that to that new hire. I want to have a foundational conversation to set clear expectations, to define the standards in which we operate with or within, and share with them that you are going to be our check-in specialist, and here's how it's going to look. We're going to walk through a mall training method, model, assist, watch, and launch. So I'm going to take an existing team member, maybe a service manager, maybe another advisor, to model for this new hire what our check-in process looks like on a consistent basis. So many of us, what we do is we hire someone and we give them, let's say, an hour or two of quote unquote training. And then after lunch, we say, you know what, I think Kelsey's got it. We're going to throw him in the fire. But we know that when we get thrown in the fire, we get burnt out. And
Mm.
so in order to make sure that we're properly and effectively onboarding someone, we're going to pair proper training along with that. So if I'm going to have an existing team member model for this new hire what the check-in process look like, I might determine for the next 2 weeks, for the first 2 weeks of this new hire's employment, I'm going to model for this new hire what our check-in process looks like. Could this new hire check a guest in by themselves in a matter of a day or two? Of course they could, but will they? No, they won't, because we're making sure that we're going through the process, we're trusting the process, and we know that practice doesn't make perfect, but practice does make progress. In order to make progress, we've got to give adequate amount of practice. And so I'm going to model for this team member what it's going to look like to check a guest in via our way for 2 weeks. So then after 2 weeks, we're going to transition into the assist phase where I am now going to assist this new hire in checking guests in. This is like me locking arms with that new hire, and we're working together as we check guests in. Still, they could check someone in by themselves, but they won't. So for the next 2 weeks, so we're talking a full month, they haven't checked in any guests by themselves. When we go from model to assist, it's kind of like them watching us ride a bike on our own, and then we give them the bike, but we give them the bike with training wheels in the assist phase.
Mhm.
And so we're right there the whole time. In the model phase, they are observing, they're asking questions, they're listening. They're in full-on observation mode, learning mode, curious mode, because when you're in those modes, you're in growth mode. And so when they get into the assist phase, again, I'm locking arms with them, assisting them in the check-in process. And let's just say we do it for 2 weeks, right? And by the way, these durations, the 2 weeks, it's just hypothetical, just throwing numbers out there at this point. But
Mhm.
because it really determines what process you're training someone on.
Yep.
But let's get into the watch phase now. So we've gone 2 weeks modeling, 2 weeks assisting. Now we're transitioning into the watch phase, which is where I'm hands off, they're hands on. They are now checking guests in finally by themselves after a month of being there. And I know a lot of listeners might be thinking, wow, that's a long time to pay somebody to
Yep.
have them not do anything on their own. And you're right. You're right. But here's the thing, it costs shop owners 6 to 9 months of a team member's salary to replace them. So
Mhm.
let's make sure that we're effectively onboarding, properly training, and consistently coaching. And that's when, and the watch phase is when the coaching phase really comes into play, because now I'm watching from afar. I'm not hovering over them. I'm certainly not micromanaging them, but I'm seeing them check guest in periodically. I'm also not seeing them check guest in because they've now. But in the watch phase, they might do the watch phase for weeks. It might be, let's say, 4 weeks. Okay, so I'm watching for 4 weeks as they check guests in. So that means for 2 weeks I modeled, for 2 weeks I assisted, for 4 weeks I watched. Finally, after 2 months of them being there, I can finally say, you know what, new hire, you're ready to launch. Like you are
Mm.
ready. You are the check-in specialist, the check-in guru. And keep in mind, I'm meeting with this individual periodically through one-on-ones, and the one-on-ones that I coach is not about disciplinary or consequential one-on-ones. Typically, when we have one-on-ones because someone's in trouble, the one-on-ones that I coach is completely different. One-on-ones allow for your team member's voice to be heard, their opinions to matter, and their ideas to be considered. So once we go through these 3 phases of the mall method, I finally launch. And guess who is going to be training the next new hire on the check-in process? It's going to be the new guy who has only been there for a couple months. And
Mm,
what organization can you think of where a 2.5 month employee is actually training the newest team member? It doesn't happen because we often don't train effectively.
mm. Yep, no, that I love the steps that are taking and the length of time. I mean, the length of time might scare us most that are listening. They're like, I maybe give them a couple days, and then they're off on their own. And it's always one of those things where like, well, if I invest that much time and then they leave, like, well, like that's such a waste of time. But then there's also the flip side of like, if you didn't invest time, they stay, and everything breaks. Like how what is the worst of the evils here? And more than likely, yeah, if they have no idea what they're doing, eventually create bad habits, and then they're the ones training other people, and they're having bad habits, and every now this culture that you created has seeped and fallen away due to this like a lack of wanting to devote that time. Because I'm right with there like with those that are struggling with it. It's like training for me. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to train an individual. It's like I don't want to do this. I know how much time it's going to take, but at the end of the day, I like know the difference between a slack job of training versus like an intense job of training, and the difference that people kind of the results that come with it. So I love that time investment that you know that needs to be there.
Richard Branson, he's the founder of Virgin Records, and
Hmm.
he where he says, train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. And when we talk about, we kind of opened with this concept of culture and what it looks like, and to really just change the name of the game for folks in the automotive industry. When you have this culture and you have this culture of training as well, I mean, there's so much that, I mean, even rooted into the hiring process. Like I encourage folks to hire their CIA team members, people who are coachable, intelligent, and have the right attitude. So when you're hiring the right people for your team, you're getting the right people on the bus and getting the wrong people off the bus. The success rate in retention exponentially increases. Is there going to be a time where you might invest a lot of time, effort, and energy in training a new hire and then they leave? It's possible, but if you're hiring the right way, if you're effectively onboarding, if you're properly training, you're creating this culture in a shop that wants people to, or that creates a want in people to stay and develop there. It's it's not often that's going to happen. So I mean, I like that you brought up the fact that yeah, it could happen, but on the flip side of things, most of the time they stay and they stay for a long time. And you're saving a lot as a shop owner. You're saving a lot of money when you hire the right person, effectively on board, properly train and consistently coach them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wanted to circle back and maybe almost get some live examples of, because I know you mentioned some of the fallacies were like poor communication, lack of accountability, but in terms of poor communication, let's define what that is through example, I guess. Like what are some common maybe ways that people advisors talk and things that they say that you're like, that is definitely an example of poor communication. So that way owners that are listening, they can be like, oh crap, my advisor says that all the time, or just little cues that maybe that they can take home with them. So like if you can run through maybe a few examples that you're like, I hear this all the time and that's what I have to correct.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So here's an example. So let's say I'm a service manager and I am going out to the shop to check the status on certain jobs, certain repairs that are happening. And I walk out and I say, "Hey, Kelsey, what's the status of this Ford F-150?" And then you give me just a quick, I mean, surface level response. And then what I do is I take what you gave me and I give you a directive immediately. So I say, "Hey, Kelsey, what's the status of X, Y, or Z?" And you give me the status and I say, "Okay, great. Don't forget to do X, Y, or Z." And then I call it a day. So I'm asking a question, you're giving me a surface level answer, and I'm giving you a directive. But that doesn't mean I'm providing clarity and direction. And as a leader, as a coach, what we get to do is we get to create safety and trust so that I can provide clarity and direction. And if I'm providing directives, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm providing direction. I can provide direction through questions. So the simple three-step roots to results coaching method that I encourage all of my clients to use is I'm a service manager. I'm going to go out to the shop and I'm going to ask Kelsey, "Hey, what's the status of this vehicle?" You're going to give me a response. And then before I give you any kind of directive, before I say anything else, I'm going to say, "Great, Kelsey, tell me more." And I'll bet you if you do this practice, you're going to get something more. And then after that, whatever more is, you're going to say, "Great. And what else? And what else?" That's the awe question, AWE. And what else? And the interesting thing about this question is this is, in my opinion, the most powerful question any of us as leaders, coaches, trainers, managers, any of us can be asking to get significant results. When you ask, and what else, there is always something else. I mean, I can tell you that I've asked this question, and what else, thousands of times over the years. And literally every single time, and I'm not exaggerating, every single time I've gotten something else, with the exception of one time. And one time, and this was actually on a coaching call, one time I asked, and what else? And the response I got was, what do you mean? And you know what my response to that was? I said, what else? I just repeated myself. And guess what? There was something else. And so I'm saying all that to say this. What we often, the mistake that we make is we ask a question, we get an answer, and we give a surface level directive. But there's nothing empowering about that. I'm not encouraging my team member to critically think, to problem solve, to think outside the box, to really grow and develop their own critical thinking skills to be a forward thinking leader. But when I do ask a question and encourage you through these phrases like tell me more and what else, that's where you can experience some real growth because like what I'm doing is I'm forcing you to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm.
And as a leader, my job is to grow and develop other leaders. And too many of us as a leader feel like I'm just need to give a directive and answer their question, but all I'm doing unintentionally is stunting everyone's growth and development, including my own.
I love the and what else. So I think one of the most powerful words I've learned a difference of is the word between but
Yeah.
and just the big difference where if you said, for example, if you said but what else, it kind of signifies a negative connotation where you did not listen and you're like I'm expecting you to say something else here, but and what else shows that you receive what they said and you're looking for more. And so I love that slight shift there, like because I learned it as like more of a in sales training for example like yeah like when you're speaking with someone and you use the and word maybe if they have a rebuttal of like that price is really high and instead of saying but this is why it's so high you say and this is what's going on and there's just a difference where they feel like it was receptive but obviously now on leadership I just didn't think of that hey, they can be used the same way in terms of that receptiveness to someone speaking to you. So I think it's a very powerful little thing that you have there.
I love that you brought up the and versus the but. One of the offerings that I do with Limitless Leadership is I offer online leadership training. And
Mhm.
so the online leadership training course is called the Limitless Leadership Blueprint. And there are 3 modules in the course. And in one of the modules, which is on uh, it's on how to develop your team. And we focus quite heavily on communication, delegation, the impact of daily huddles, how to lead one-on-ones. And there's a lesson on crucial conversations and we talk about word choice and we've heard the phrase it's not what you say it's not what you say it's how you say it but sometimes it is what you say like sometimes it truly is what you say and when you use the word and instead of but it's powerful like just like you shared and so that's actually mentioned in the course and we talk about how to reframe the conversation with simple word choices and word replacements like and instead of but. And here's an example I'll give you because my wife is great at this. Like if there's something I've done that I maybe I did it not her way or
Mhm.
if she's frustrated with me, she'll say, "Hey, honey, I love you and then she'll emphasize I love you and then she'll say whatever else after that. But what we're accustomed to is, I'm having a one-on-one with you, Kelsey, and I'm going to start by, it's that compliment sandwich. And hey, Kelsey, man, we're so thankful for you to be here, and you are really adding a lot of value to the team, and the influence that you have across the entire team is incredible. And so for that, I just want to thank you. But and I say something after the but.
Yeah,
Everything that preceded the but is just
it's
dismissed
gone.
out the
Yeah,
window.
yeah.
So when we can say, hey, Kelsey, positive, 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 and here's an opportunity area that I've identified, and I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't share this with you.
Mhm.
Ultimately, you know how much I care. It's coming from a good place. And so when I can share all the good and the opportunity areas, like you're hanging with me. Like I haven't dismissed all the good because it's all there and it's all there
Mhm.
and it's palpable. And I want you to know that. Like I want you to truly know and believe we are appreciative of all the things that you've done. And here's a growth opportunity area for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. I hope people are able to run with that in some shape or form, especially being a leader and doing that. Now, if we go like an example of just say an advisor to a customer now, like of an example of poor communication, and then what could be then done differently in terms of, hey, this is how maybe the results could have been much better if you communicated in this way.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
That phrase, what I'm talking about. If an advisor says that to a guest, as a guest, I'm like, oh man, like wait, were you not being honest to begin with? I mean, it's like
Hmm.
so that's one example. I mean, you're asking the question, and and that's one example. Can I be honest with you? It's the but versus the and.
Mm,
It's even when I like something if I'm an advisor and if I'm sharing something with a guest, notice I'm using the word sharing. I'm not saying telling. Kelsey, I want to tell you about this. I want to tell you about that. If I'm telling you something, I'm speaking to you. But if I'm sharing, I'm speaking with you. And that's why, as an advisor, I want to share with my guests. I'm a liaison between mechanical specialist and guest. So I'm sharing information in a way that will allow them to make an informed, positive buying decision. So these phrases like, can I be honest with you? It's the but versus the and. I mean, here's my favorite. What is it? So, something about like, hey, calm down. Is like hopefully no one like I really hope that's not being said often, but unfortunately, like that does happen on occasion. One phrase, well, basically, and then I'll finish whatever I said after basically. Like, keep in mind that the guest they don't speak the same language that we speak, which is automotive.
mm.
So we're literally like we're bilingual, like we're speaking a different language. So when I start saying things like, well, basically, blah, 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 you don't want to unintentionally and inadvertently belittle or really insult their intelligence. You want to come from a place of an educator and someone from a place of someone who's just quite frankly willing to serve in any capacity to allow this person to understand and fully believe in what they're purchasing.
So one thing I've noticed that I think you do very well is that you use your hands very well. And it's as I listened to a different podcast of a I hate I've been trying to think of his name this entire time and I can't think of his name, so I'm not even going to pretend like I know it and I'm going to butcher it. But he's a very influential speaker teacher that is out there, and he was on a podcast as a guest, and he explained the different uses of hands. And then I noticed right there when he said, "Hey, calm down, use your hands down," and then kind of in that negative way, and that immediately I can easily see a bunch of probably advisors doing this on accident, where it's like hey, maybe even if you're not saying calm down, but you're just talking in a manner that is like almost lowering the guest and saying that they're beneath you. That is if you simply just turn your hands upside down and you make it up, it's more uplifting. And as you're talking to them now, they're feeling more positive energy. It's just a simple little twist, and that I never thought about. Like even using, I mean, hand gestures are I think are important. Sometimes when if you use it too tight, then you seem very shy and tentative, and maybe someone is not as confident in what you're saying versus someone that is using their space. Is it from my understanding? But then also, I mean, people also tend to do the finger pointing on accident, where like they finger point and say something, where it's like, oh, directive, like as you were saying, instead of like, hey, direction. So I think that's one thing that as you've spoken here, I love that I can even see your hands. It's making me feel like I need to adjust my camera and make so that way people can see my hands while I talk as well. Since we're doing this over Zoom. But what is there anything that maybe you've taught or anything that you've seen and implemented that are like, hey, you know what? If someone just adjusts certain elements here, it could honestly make a big difference. And I mean, one thing, for example, also I see like when I have visited shops and see like the level of positivity sometimes isn't quite there. It's like it's just like it's a more of a neutral, if not maybe a little bit low. Like I mean, it's hard to have high energy all the time. So how do we implement these things to help them?
Yeah, great question. There's a so one of my mentors from when I first got into the industry, I had a great mentor who gave me some good advice, and he said, and this is when I was trying to really build my confidence as a public speaker because when I got into the industry, I really didn't do a lot of public speaking, so I wasn't comfortable at the time.
Hmm.
Thankfully, now through almost a decade of, or actually been more than a decade now of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I love public speaking. It's something that gives me life. And what I've learned over the years is being able to be a bit animated with your hands. You know, your body language is also a form of communication. And the advice that my mentor gave me was go watch comedians, because comedians understand the importance of stage presence,
Mm,
and they understand the necessary pauses to take and to make. And they do move their hands quite a bit. It's a way that you're telling the story. If I'm just standing here and my tone of voice begins to lower and I'm just a bit more monotonous, automatically the listening audience is like, man, I'm thinking about something else now, and I
yeah.
want to try to keep people engaged. And so I'm trying to bring an energy. I'm trying to bring a level of communication where this is not about me. I'm not the hero on stage. I'm trying to connect with my audience through authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. And I can do that through keeping them engaged and doing the hand gestures when necessary, and
Mhm.
applicable, of course, but I think it shows it's a form of trust also. When there's some science behind this, which I'm not qualified to get into, but I know that there's a science behind how you're using your hands and the trust that is felt when you do it as well. So that's something to think about. I'm curious, is the individual that you're thinking about? There's a guy named it's Ask Vin is the
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's Vin's the
yeah,
gentleman. Yes.
yeah.
100%.
He's a fantastic communicator, and
Yes.
yeah, so I've seen some of his stuff before.
Yep. But yeah, it was an interview he did on the Diary of a CEO podcast. And like it was a phenomenal list. It was like 2 hours, maybe 3 hours long. But there were just so many little nuggets throughout it that I was just like, oh my, there's so many subconscious things that I never even thought that it would make an impact. But then like I even like was like pretending and practicing. I was like, oh my goodness, like I could easily see how like it even makes it easier to speak to someone in that sense. Where now if you just start doing it subconsciously, like it definitely will be received in a better note. Where then even now as you're focusing mentally yourself on like serving, that can easily be perceived that way too, versus like no, this guy's going through the motions. And then so like it'll feel sort of fake if you again are being robotic or again very neutral tone, things like that. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And then the lack of accountability piece, I also enjoyed, but how do we help people stay accountable? Like what are some things, simple things that people can do to be like, you know what, this will help you stay accountable to just be better at your role.
Yeah, I've already given a few acronyms. I've done the mall method. I've done
Yep.
this. I'm gonna give you one more. CTA, call to action. Calls to action are so critical. What I often say is that meetings are just a waste of time. And then I wait for the shock and the awe. Like, oh my God, he said that. Meetings are a waste of time if calls to action aren't implemented beyond all of the talking. Because what happens is we go to a meeting and we talk about a lot of great things. It's a lot of great ideas. It's a lot of brainstorming, verbally processing, but beyond that meeting, oftentimes action doesn't get implemented. And so as a leader, what I encourage is when I'm, well, let me back up and say, as a leadership coach, I'll say this, as a leadership coach, what I do with my clients, I encourage them to have one-on-ones and to really redefine what a one-on-one really is at your shop. I'll say it again, I said it earlier, but one-on-ones are designed for your team members' voice to be heard, for their opinions to matter, and their ideas to be considered. And during the one-on-one, there's gonna be a lot of information that's being shared reciprocally across both parties. And then after that, I always encourage a call to action being given at the end of the one-on-one, because you're trying to create this culture of accountability. And so when you can give a call to action beyond the one-on-one, you are letting this individual know, like, hey, we talked about something. Here's your call to action. At our next one-on-one in a couple of weeks, we're going to touch base on the status and how you're doing. Now, as someone who's leading a one-on-one, you don't always have to be the one who's determining what their call to action is too. I can have a one-on-one with you and say, hey, Kelsey, we had a lot of good information that we discussed here. You tell me what's going to be your call to action between now and the next meeting that we're going to have. And so you can determine what your call to action is going to be. And early on, it can be something very minuscule. I mean, it's really not about the actual action. It's about the accountability in the action. Are you actually doing what you said you're going to do? Because it's this say what you mean and mean what you say type of culture that you're trying to create. So you give calls to action, and then in order to actually create this culture of accountability, I'm going to take it a step further and say, if you're trying to actually create this culture of accountability, it is, in my opinion, a requirement for you to follow up on the follow through. And what I mean by this is, let's say you and I meet every 2 weeks, Kelsey, and we're meeting on Tuesdays at 12 and or sorry, every other Tuesday at 12. So let's say we have a one-on-one on Tuesday at 12, and then there's a call to action that either you or myself gave yourself. And then Thursday rolls around. 2 days later, I'll say Thursday or Friday. I'm going to go to you and say, hey, Kelsey, just a reminder your call to action was to do X, Y, or Z. What can I do to help you with that call to action? I'm not asking, do you need any help? Because we both know the answer is always going to be, no, I'm good. I got it. I'm going to say, what can I do to help you with your call to action? Because what I'm doing is I'm kind of almost like tricking your brain into thinking like, oh, he's not asking a yes or no response. Like I actually have to give him some kind of response here. We're trying to
Mhm.
create dialogue. So when I say, what can I do to help you with that? You're going to actually think about, wait, do I actually need Josh's help with this call to action? Now, some of you might be listening and thinking, hey, Josh, isn't this micromanaging? Yes, it is. And while I don't advocate for micromanagement, what I do know is that as you're in the early stages of creating a culture of accountability, there's going to be a few little nuances that are going to have to be done that are not the norm. And one of them is to do a slight bit of micromanaging with this call to action for the sake of a creation of accountability. Now, once you do this 3 or 4 times, you won't have to regularly follow up on the follow through. Because again, I don't advocate for micromanagement. I think it's one of the greatest hindrances in our industry across and among many industries. But this is one way, following up on the follow through, that you can incorporate this culture of accountability, and calls to action is the key.
Yes, no, definitely. And I mean, one trick that I have found for like all of my one-on-ones is always having the other individual lead the meeting, and then that expectation is set where they know they are leading this meeting. Like I am here just to assist and help and listen to see what they have to bring to the table, and hopefully they're prepared for the meeting. But again, with that expectation being set, they know that oh, like I'm in charge here, like, and that's the way it should be. And then again, hearing suggestions and maybe something from like great idea, but not but and we will go this way or whatever it may be with certain things, whether it be good or bad in terms of if an action should be taken or not in that course. But as long as they're actively thinking about these things, that's what I want. And so I think for a lot of owners, maybe they're just used to again being the head honcho, the leader, and they're just kind of directing, like, hey, we're meeting, this is what's going on, this is what's wrong, go after it and fix it. Rather than no, like let's see if they can figure out said fixing that needed to be done on their own, or like again, you're just nudging them in the right directions, and that's going to help them now like next time, you do not need to also tell them again and again and again and again. Like they're starting to figure that out of like, oh, yeah, this is how I can course correct myself, and they're catching it. So yeah, little things like this. I think you've given so many great acronyms. Hopefully, people were taking notes throughout this of making sure they understood. But Josh, I appreciate all your time here today, and hopefully we helped someone become a little bit more of an effective leader and helping them guide their business. But as a final treat for individuals, what is, say, a great leadership book that you think all individuals need to read?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my own book. So if you're watching this behind me, there's a picture of my book called Leading a Legacy, How to Lead Today to Make an Impact for Tomorrow. You can find that on Amazon. But there are way better books than mine. And the first book that in fact I'm gonna give you two. And my mentor gave me these books when I first jumped in the industry as well. And they are number one, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm,
Phenomenal book. It's over 100 years old, and but it's still effective to this day.
very relevant. Yep.
And the second one is The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen
Mm,
Covey. So
yep.
both are fantastic starters.
Yep, definitely great book recommendations there. Well, Josh, for those that may be interested in like, I want Josh to come help coach our team, or I just need some help and assistance on this question. What is the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, thank you for that, Kelsey. You can find me at my website, limitlessleadership.co. It's not .com, it's .co, so limitlessleadership.co. I'm also on social media, so you can find me, Josh Parnell, on Facebook. You can find me at The Bearded Leader on Instagram, on YouTube. And then, of course, I'm on LinkedIn as well, Josh Parnell. So yeah, find me through social media or just visit my website. You can find the social media links through my website, but limitlessleadership.co might be the most centralized location to find me.
Yep. And you can also reach out to Josh to learn how he creates such a rich beard, and he'll give you all the tips and tricks that he has there. But Josh, again, thank you so much for being on with us today. But if you haven't already liked to subscribe, please do so. That helps us a lot here. But I'm Kelsey with Lyft Auditor Marketing. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.